Welcome into another episode of Discard for Magic. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron.
And I'm the other host, James or Jexic, and today we're happy to have on both Allies.
Hey guys.
And Nestle.
Hello everybody.
And we're going to discuss the Isle Vekkid. But before we do that, I think I'd like to throw it over to them to each answer what keeps them coming back to Summoner Wars. And I guess we'll go alphabetical and start with Allies.
I've thought about that question a bit before, and I think the main aspect of Summoner Wars that makes me want to come back is the depth of each factions. Because there are so many matchups, when you play a single faction, you will discover and rediscover some of their combos and some of their gimmick that are really fun. And when they work, there's always the spark for me. Oh, that combo is so good. It's so interesting. It's fun to mess around with all the cards, the interplay. So I think the fact that there's pretty good balance in the game, and that when I queue up some of my favorite faction, I'm probably going to have good chances to win most of the time. The fact that I can discover a faction, perfect it, and master it even more as I play, I think that's why Summoner Wars is special for me. In a nutshell, that'd be that depth of a faction and the balance of the game, which is pretty good.
All right, how about you, Nestle?
Yeah, I think Allies stole the words right out of my mouth.
Did I?
Yeah, I love the fact that I can just focus on one faction and look at every different matchup that they have and start looking at some things that become apparent in some specific matchups but aren't as important in others, and being able to just optimize small things like that. Really love the fact that I can just play one faction for so long and not get bored of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's not just that every faction feels unique to play, but also every faction feels unique to play against, which leads to a lot of interesting matchups that I can find, and I just really like that about the game.
Well, we're happy that you guys keep coming back to Summoner Wars. Having you guys in the community has been pretty great. But you're both experts on the Isle Vekkid, which we're going to be talking about today. So why don't we start out with just some tips that you could give a brand new player who starts playing the Isle Vekkid.
Do you want to go, Nestle, or should I start?
I'm fine with whichever.
All right. I'll just give one tip that maybe is not as obvious as others, but to me, it has been what clicked for me at the start of testing that faction and also playing that faction more. The positioning of the gates around Rokomoko. I really like to place a gate in such a way that next turn, if I summon a brand new unit, it immediately powers up Roko. May it be a dancer or a fighter for movement to maneuver Roko better. It can combo with other stuff in the deck when at the start of your turn, Roko has all those abilities that can switch around your play pattern. What I mean by that is if you have a dancer next to you, at the start of a turn, you can play the epic, the extra attack, and immediately reposition Rokomoko. So that's a defensive move I used against Jexic in the Tournament of Champion. When you're cornered, that's something you can do. In a nutshell would be look how you can place gates and how you can place Roko diagonal to a gate so that when you summon a brand new unit, it powers up Roko for movement or for other forms of extra attack, extra dice, protection, all those stuff.
Like when you get a new gate, try to place it either diagonal to Roko or 2 spaces away somewhere so that you can summon something next to it.
Exactly. Maybe that's not as beginner friendly as I thought.
No, that's a good tip because especially you point out that islands can be used anytime during the turn. You can get advantage from it right away instead of having to move into position to take advantage of that. I like that.
Right, exactly.
I think that's the tip that I was following mostly when I started playing the game. Understood that quickly, that just you should get as many open summoning spots and get Roku in the middle of them just to be able to, mostly for the fighters honestly, just because then you aren't wasting a move. I think I have 2 important tips, probably the more obvious one, which is just discard everything. Way too much when I watch Isle Vekkid players play, I see them keeping a lot of cards and I'm like, oh no, discard them. You're still not going to be able to play out your entire deck unless you're at the very end of your deck. Just think about what's left in your deck, right? If you have still all 3 champs in your deck, discard your hand. You're not gonna need those 2 Crab Knights, who cares? You're gonna play Y2 instead, you're gonna play Turanga instead, you're gonna play the champs, right? The games where it's the most one-sided for me as Isle Vekkid are the ones where I just draw my am super late, because that allows me to discard my entire deck and still have a lot of tempo on the board. When I have Champ Slate or when I have Crab Knights. But even if you don't, make sure you just aren't getting too attached to your cards. Knowing when to get attached to your cards is a really big part of learning Isle Vekkid. Knowing this scenario, I really would rather have this unit, but that means I can't stick around with any other units in my hand, so I'm going to discard them all. Long story short, discard as much as you can outside of your comfort zone. Discard way more than you usually do. You're going to figure out when you're discarding too much. Good job if you hit that point, but if you do hit it, you're going to realize it quickly, and then I promise you're going to start winning games more.
The cost of the units and champions of Isle Vekkid are quite high, right? So oftentimes if you discard a lot, you still have something to play. Even in the late game, if you have 10 cards left, you have 2 Crab Knights, maybe Ivalu, Turanga, and that's a lot of magic. So maybe people are afraid to discard heavily because they have that end game where they had 10 magic over and they're like, oh my god, I discarded so much more than I needed. With IV, it's really hard to over discard because things cost quite a lot.
Sometimes people say that it's like get to 8 magic to get Y2, but really Y2 is just gravy on top of that. Having 8 magic, the main thing is that you're gonna summon like three super expensive units and just flood the board, and your opponent is not going to be able to deal with that.
That advice hurts my soul a little bit, but
it's the harsh truth we all need to face at some point.
Yeah, just don't watch my Isle Vekkid games, Nestle. Don't do that. So,
are Isle Vekkid one of your stronger decks, Aaron, or no?
I feel like I do pretty well with them. I almost took them in the tournament. I remember we were talking about this, James, but I feel like I roll very poorly with them often, so it kind of puts a bad taste in my mouth on some of the games. Like, I had just played them in the league against Shibata, and I rolled really, really bad. I was 2 for 12 with Roko, and I still almost won that game, but Shibata went 3 for 3 with an Undead Archer when I had 2 health left and a Crab Knight next to me, so he needed all 3 of those. Games like that. And I've had a couple of them with IV, maybe because I just roll so much range dice with Roko, but I've had a couple games like that. The dice just don't like me as IV, so it puts a little bit of a bad taste. I do enjoy them a lot as a deck, and I think I do pretty well with them. Nestle, you'll be proud of me. In that game, I had 8 magic. I think I had 9 at one point. It was pretty crazy.
That's good.
You said you had 2 things you wanted to say? Like, one was discard heavily, and then...
I'm gonna just quickly go over the second one because I don't think it's as beginner friendly, but it's just keep Rokomoko close to everything. You're gonna get a feel for that the more you play, but it's important to just have Rokomoko be your babysitter, because outside of like Crab Knights, you don't actually have many independently strong units. Usually still require someone else as well. Like snipers are just 2/3s by themselves. Dancers, in order to activate the ability, need other guys, and fighters are fighters. So you often need Roku to be there, like especially if you're playing a ranged game, just to be able to hit something back. You have like a sniper that's just sitting in front of your 10 health gate, and Roku is in the corner of the board doing something else. Sniper is not the best example. If you have like a Dancer just sitting there, if they hit it with a ranged unit, either retreat that Dancer and basically lose that exchange, or run it forward and have it die the next turn. So try to keep Roku at the very least within 3 spaces of your units to counterattack like that, but optimally within 2, just so you don't need a fighter as well in order to have him babysit.
So following the earlier point about discarding, do you think there are any units that or cards that are must play?
No.
No.
I used to say Sakova is very strong and I rarely discard her, but I discarded it in the tournament that's going on right now and I won that game super badly, so
anything's dispensable, potentially.
if you draw something early, it's just gone. Play everything.
Yeah.
Don't look at your first hand, just discard the whole thing.
Put an asterisk on that, but you said unit.
So there's some events you would keep, you're saying?
1, Island's Might, because you can usually play it that turn and get at least 3 ranged, which is good. Just getting 3 ranged with the Island's Might is good. Also, you can often keep it till something big that your opponent plays, or to reassure some important kill. Even sometimes you can just use Island's Might, attack with Rocco, hide him, and then use 3 attacks with everything else. Such a versatile event that it's hard to find a situation where you don't use it. And like Allies said earlier, you are positioning your gates thinking about Island's Might as well. Right, your whole game plan is thinking like, how can I utilize that event as well as I can? If you're playing well, you're gonna be able to use it in a lot of situations. That's like the main card I usually don't discard. Everything else is situational.
That's interesting. Maybe if we change the question slightly, it would change my answer, because at point value, the question, is there something you must play? I don't think there is anything in the deck that you have to play to win the game or to optimize Ivy's gameplay. But if you say something like, is there cards you overwhelmingly play in your games? I'd say there's a few. Like Island Might is one, because it's so easy to utilize. Even at the basic level, if it's not perfectly optimized, you can get free range, then move your units, and then it's fine, right? But for me, there's Island Might, something I rarely discard, but it happened before. If I play against Cave Goblins sometimes and Unrelenting is up and I'm pressured from all sides, Island Might doesn't do that much. I'd prefer a Crab Knight or something else to block Gate Path and things like that. It's really rare that I would discard Island Might. The other two for me would be Saka. Like you said, Saka was so versatile and such a good card. It allows for such creative and good plays with Rocco. It's really great. For me, there's a third one that would be Waveborn Relic, which I thought about like a lot today. Looking at some of my games, I play almost all the time 2 of them, even if it's just for 1 boost. But oftentimes it's like, when I buff Rocco, when I'm in the state where Rocco is next to 1 unit, be it a Crab Knight, a Sniper, or a Dancer for more than 2 turns, I'll put one next to it and get even better trades. It allows for some medium dice to become really great dice. What I mean by that is, with Shove, everybody knows Shove, it allows a trade on 1 flank. So Rocco doesn't have that much big burst outside of Island Might. Their combo, a Sniper and a Fighter, which is 5 dice. Rocco and a Dancer, which is 5 dice again. So all of those on average don't kill a 5 HP unit. Even more so if only 1 flank is open. And when you combine it with Waveborn Relic, you can now trade against 5 HP units pretty well. Which is why I think Ivy is favorable against Savannah Elves, because they can trade into their IHP high cost units so efficiently with that event. So for me, add that one to the list, which I play like 80% of my game. I'd play all 2 of them. The other events, I can take it or leave it really, but except Island Might. But Waveborn for me is pretty important for burst, which is not that high apart from Island Might. What do you think about that, Nesle?
I agree that it's super important when you need to deal with a lot of 5 health units, but I find it funny that you mentioned Savannahs, because that's a matchup where I play it a bit less often, I find.
Really?
Because you usually kill 4 health units with just Roku and a Dancer. That's a 60% chance. If you can buff up Roku by another ranged, then that's great. And with Savannah Elves, it's often a ranged games. The Border Archers, they are super important to kill. I would mention Relic for the Polar Dwarves and Vanguards are the 2 main that are coming to mind. Because they often just shove 5 health at you and tell you deal with this. It's not even that they put it on like Dancers or something like that. I usually put it on a Crab Knight just to be able to 2-shot those 5 health units pretty reliably. Even though I agree Relic is super good, I think I'm still like discovering just how good it is the more I play Isle Vekkid. But if I get it early or if I don't have much magic, I'm going to discard it. I usually don't play both of them.
As a quick aside, I do think it's interesting you guys highlight that card, Waveborn Relic, because it's good enough for deck building. I use it in the Tundra Orcs. All right, carry on.
You do, really?
Yeah.
There's our deck building shout out for the podcast.
Mandatory one shot out.
Yep.
because like Brutal Force, the event from Tundra Orcs is good, and it's kind of like half Brutal Force, half Hellforged Axe. A nice little boost of strength and lets you to push stuff, and then with Roko lets you copy the push, so it's almost like having Brutal Force out, but it also gives you a little strength, and it's persistent. It works for more events, especially or more turns, especially if you place it on like a Crab Knight, like you said, you can get that benefit for a few turns. You guys haven't said anything about Spite Skin, which makes you think it's more discardable, but I have found it to be really annoying in certain matchups. Like if you're facing like the Cave Goblins, it's really good there, and some other ones like that. That might be more situational or matchup dependent.
For each card, I can mention at least one matchup where it's extremely important. You need to play it if you can. Spite Skin in particular is against, I think, all of the goblins, Storm and Cave Goblins, because Cave Goblins just Slingers die, and against Storm Goblins, Wall Swappers die, and against Sand Goblins, the Darkbiters die.
The Bug Biters die, yeah. So it's good against all the goblins.
Some interactions you don't really think about. Against Thunderox is good because all of a sudden you are often in reach of like a Charger plus Shaman for glorying you. But if you play Spite Skin, that Charger can't rush. Just think about the matchup with Spite Skin. It's a bit more matchup dependent, but also it's not a bad card just by itself. If you put it on a Crab Knight, it's gonna get a lot of value.
Going back to the common units for a second, you mentioned a lot of the common units and saying they're all pretty interchangeable. Are there any that you use more than the others? Like I find a lot of people tend to lean on the Dancers a lot, but you guys have mentioned basically all of them besides not really the Snipers a whole lot yet, but
I was gonna talk about how versatile the deck is. It is a strength to be able to discard everything and still find good plays. To be able to still have a game even though you don't have the perfect hand. Sometimes some factions you really need that card in that matchup, otherwise it's not gonna work. But here it's okay if you don't have that card immediately. You can temporize with other things. That's my feeling for the strength of the commons. Every one of them can have really good utility. Fighters are not a fighting, even though it's in the name, they're not a fighting support unit, at least rarely. It's more a repositioning support unit, but other than that, I'm fine playing just a Crab Knight next to Roko and attacking once, or a Dancer and attacking with the Dancer and Roko. I don't have like a common must play, but at the same time, they are good in certain situations. With Crab Knight, it's easier if you're clogged. If a faction really goes on you, you maybe don't have space for a good Dancer combo, but Crab Knight is easier. So yeah, it's not an easy answer because I think they're so versatile and you can play most of them pretty efficiently that, yeah, what do you think, Nesle?
I think they are all good. I do find myself just like slightly playing more Dancers and Crab Knights than the other two. And that is another reason why I encourage discarding a bunch with this deck, is because those two are the more expensive ones. Crab Knights are something that's surprised me a bit when I'm still learning the deck, is just how good Crab Knights are. Trade out super efficiently even without Roku, and the fact that they buff up Roku is just an insane thing. It allows you to even just to put Roku forward. As long as they have tough, it's not really going to be good for the opponent to waste an attack on them if they have other good targets. As long as it's not like a super high burst damage faction. I love fighters. They aren't a fighting unit like Allies said, but they're just super versatile. The fact that you can use them to move Roku helps you out a bunch in a ranged game, or you just need to get to something. And then if your opponent comes close to you, that fighter super easily gets into the fight. They help you out in the moment, but then they become useful afterwards as well. I'm going to say I usually discard snipers and fighters unless they're useful in that moment, or unless I see them being important later on. If I like drew 2 fighters and I draw my third one, and I think I'm going to need it soon, I'm not going to discard it. I'm going to just prepare. I'm not going to hope that I'm going to draw that fourth one. I'm going to prepare for it by just keeping it in hand. In general, Crab Knights are great because they're just the main common that's just good by itself. Dancers are great because they work super well with the deck. Snipers are good because they work with the Dancers and the Fighters, and Fighters are good for their versatility and the fact that them and the Dancers fulfill the role of allowing you to attack 3 times in the same row. So they can often serve each other's purpose in that sense.
I just want to mention that even though commons are great on their own, they are matchup dependent to an extent. I don't think When you face swamp orcs, you're gonna just summon a crab knight and send it to its death. You know what I mean? It's of course against bursty faction or factions with gimmicks that bypass tough. You don't want to waste that tree magic so easily. Even though they are good independently, they are good independently with a context, right? If you play against Phoenix Elves, they can just play a burn and all of a sudden it's a tree magic loss. Of course, I mean with attacks, but within a particular context, every common is good and has its place and has its weakness as well. To me, snipers, I really love them because, and I often play a super sniper strat. Often, maybe that's not the right word, but I love this strat. Putting a Waveborn Relic on it, putting a Spite Skin, or even 2 on it, and just having it follow Roko for double attacks, which are essentially 7 ranged dice on a target. If you play against a heavy melee faction, it can't hit you back because you're pushing them too far. So that's so fun to me. That's viable to an extent, but it's often within a context that will be viable. In general, I'd say dancers are more easy to play against everything. They don't cost that much. They oftentimes survive 2 turns. They allow Roko to attack and be safe. So I'd say dancers are more played, but not always. But I'd say Dancer a bit more than the others.
I think I find myself playing Dancers and Crab Knights about the same, so I rank them a bit above everything. General rule of thumb, and let me know if you agree with this, I think that Dancers are better in a ranged game, Crab Knights are better than a melee game, and everybody else is just, the snipers and the fighters are just in the moment when you need them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think so. You want the value of being able to attack with Roku at range to keep up a bit with range decks safely, and attacking at range, killing something with 4 HP at range is not as easy. Sometimes the gimmick other decks have don't allow for such guaranteed kill on a 4 HP, so I'd agree with you. Yeah.
What about their champs? What do you guys think about their champs? Oh, actually, before we move on, we missed Plunge.
We didn't talk about Plunge, yeah.
I'll just go quickly and say I think Isle Vekkid's main weakness is the setup of board organization, if I can say. So you want Roko to be buffed by multiple units. You want movement. You want Roko to move in a position where he can attack at range to keep up with ranged decks. You only have 1 range unit. A lot of decks have 2, so you need Roko to keep up with it. That's why I talked about having gates near for Roko to be able to move right away to maneuver around it. So to me, Plunge is both the event that facilitates that. It can easily mean a much better trade with Plunge than without it. It's also maybe the only surprise the deck has. It's rough to around a Plunge sometimes. It comes out of nowhere. Without that, it would be maybe easier to play around Isle Vekkid had. You'd be less careful. So it's both a threat that doesn't have to be played and a really big facilitator for some good combos, some good trades and repositioning. It can be used defensively and offensively. I don't know if you guys ever played against Bookish Oleas Ivy, but that guy goes full ham into enemy territory. With Plunge, he goes full ham with Ivy. I've never seen this. It's impressive. I didn't test it that much. Offensive Ivy with like double plunge into gate into urine Maison now. It's the surprise element of the deck. I think the threat is akin to other things you don't see coming and you need to play around it. I like plunge, but I usually play 1, but sometimes you just can't make use of it and sometimes you prefer the magic.
A very in the moment event, right? If you can use it, then you should play it. And if you can see yourself using it in the next 1 or 2 turns, and it's a late game, you don't have many cards left, then play it. Usually you just discard it, because if you're positioning properly, you don't need Plunge. But Plunge is there help you out in case Roku is too far away. Attack some unit, or if you want to just position properly and you need 4 moves for that. The fact that your opponent needs to play around it really helps you out, and it's probably its main strength. The fact that it's hard to set up because you need the units and you need the plunge and you need everything positioned already well. If your opponent doesn't know if you have plunge in hand, then it's a lot easier to set up from their perspective, right?
It's a big game of chicken. When you have 8 magic and they don't know you have plunge, it's a big game of chicken. They can't. If they take that risk, it might pay off, right? They might actually. You don't have way to. So you're afraid for nothing. You just go in and you walk right over them. But if they do have it, what's going to happen to you? That's the surprise factor.
Yeah, I think I also want to mention that plunge is very important for Y2E sometimes. That guy moves 2 spaces a turn. It's not too
Yeah.
scary if you don't get, but when he can just teleport somewhere, well,
And I don't know if you've ever did that, Nestle, but I've won games by attacking my own Y2E with Waveborn Relic, just for that extra space.
I've done that in the live league against Bean. I had like a 50% chance of winning and didn't, and then I had another chance of winning and didn't. Yeah, I had like 3 range on a 2 health summoner afterwards. It's fun to do.
Yeah, certainly.
Very funny turn, but it's usually more of a like spectacle. I remember like a handful of times where I punched myself in order to get some assassinations, but it's more for show.
Some things maybe we didn't emphasize, but plunge can allow assassination of. You get a fighter, you move 3 space up with it. You move 2 space or 3 space up with Roko. Then you plunge. It's 4 space. So 4 space is not bad, right? It's a better Swift. Sometimes it can take people off guard. And plunge can also enable some good movement from Saka. I know we're going to talk about champions right after, but Saka can move up to 5 space with Island Might and the move from Roko. With plunge, it's 3 space with the movement, then you plunge, then 2 other space. So it can give you a lot of reach, but it's like Nestle said, it's more of a moment thing. If you think you really need it to win the game because the opponent is in the corner, maybe keep it, but I wouldn't recommend to really hold on to a plunge for very long.
Yeah, I think I have more things to say about plunge, but a lot of them are related to Y2E, so well, remind me to talk about that once we get to Y2E.
Right, it's coming soon.
All right, so shall we do the champs maybe in cost order? Start with Saka Ua and then go up.
I think that's good, especially since I think Sako is probably the one you'll be playing the most.
Because of its cost, right?
The worst case scenario, she can just be a good unit on the board and that moves around a bit. Best case scenario, she kills a 3 health summon. She's just a very versatile champ.
Combos you can do with her, right? You can attack with Roko, then move Saka in to a double attack on a single flank. That's super simple. It's efficient. You then protect Roko. She can also enable a dancer play. You attack with Saka on a unit, then you attack with Roko to move Saka next to a dancer. Then the dancer attack and goes back behind Saka or on her side or for efficient play. So those are combos that come to mind just with attacks and movement from Roko. You combined that with Island Might, which is now 2 movement when she attacks. So she can attack and fill a spot that Roko liberated just by killing something in front of a gate. That's 2 space of movement. So that's what comes in at the top of my head. Do you have other example of what you can do with her?
A lot of things, actually. If I started mentioning everything you can do with her, I think this would be a very long segment. The main thing is that she just moves 4 spaces a turn. If you're playing Isle Vekkid, how Isle Vekkid are intended to be played under quotation marks, you are going to be able to move her 4 spaces every turn. And one of those, you can do it in the attack phase. So just that fact makes her insane. All of a sudden, that's just extra reach your opponent has to worry about, allowing her to attack and then move back into safety if she needs to. Then there's what you mentioned with the dancers. With the dancers, but also the fact that you can attack and then protect Roku with her. Kind of serves as an off-brand dancer in that sense, because you just can attack and then protect Roku. You don't move back like with dancers. It's, I guess, more similar to a fighter in that degree. Except he has 5 health, so it's a lot better to do that. But also she just can do so much. It's a lot. Just that 4 movement is probably like the main thing. If like your opponent leaves some important unit, like their summoner or a champion exposed, you can just probably move Saka next to them and then attack with whatever else is attacking it, like probably Rokomoko. But also, it isn't just 4 spaces a turn. It's 5 if you play Island's Might, and that's probably her main synergy in the deck.
Since it triggers off of any attack or move from Roko, the extra Islands Might attack is very useful for Saka.
Especially since it's both of those attacks are happening in the attack phase, right? I've had games where I would kill a unit, move Saka in the killed unit spot, then attack something else, then move Saka again to reach something that my opponent never expected me to reach ever in my life. There's a lot of things that you can do with her. Just her versatility makes her strong. She also obviously works with like snipers, because you can attack something, attack with Roku, move her to the side, and then attack with the sniper for the extra die, stuff like that.
For me, Saka is the most creative plays I had with the Vekkids. The most crazy things I've done was with Island Might and Saka. You can enable Roko sniper buff by attacking with Saka, and you attack something else with Roko. Then Saka moves away. You then attack that unit with the buff of Sniper. The attack phase force is really, really good. We see the Fox in the Spectral Conclave or the Seeker in Shadow Elves, which are great units, right? Because they can move after attacking. So this is a bit of that, but with more versatility somehow. So yeah, she's really great.
One of the plays that like make me feel the most smart, let's say, when I'm playing Isle Vekkid is like when I use Island's Might to attack in the build phase and then plunge something to Saka because she moved 4 spaces already. It comes up super rarely. A lot of things with Isle Vekkid are one-off things like that. The coolest plays, I think, are things that you usually don't do, but with Isle Vekkid, a lot of the cool plays are just something that you usually won't do, right? And that's one of the things that makes me feel like, yes, I've done it. I've done this extremely cool play that my opponent certainly didn't think I could do, and that I certainly didn't think I could do.
And this ties well with why we come back to Summoner Wars. Like, Isle Vekkid to me is the perfect example of some of those interaction and combos that can never happen, like in 200 games, and then happens, and it's new, and you're like, oh my god, this is so cool. This is so unique. We can talk about other champions, but Saka's great.
One more thing, I think popped up once ever, and that's you can attack in the summon phase with Island's Might in order to be able to summon twice from one spot.
You're right, yeah. You're right.
Kind of like Eager Adventurer or something.
You basically give her rush. There's a lot of situations like that with Saka that I can mention, and she's just the epitome of specific plays that come up once in 1,000 games that are super cool. Her and Island's Might, I think, are the 2 best examples of that in this deck. I think we should stop at some point talking about her.
Yeah, we spent like 10 minutes on Saka.
One you haven't really mentioned so far tonight very much was Turanga Ivalu. How do you find yourself using that champion?
I love this champion. Really love it. I'm sorry, Nestle. I need to speak about this champion. I'll say this. I thought that this champion was a bit underpowered when we played it, when we tested it, because I thought he needed a bit more HP. But turns out what he needs is a friend. When you play Turanga Ivalu, you need to play around him. You need to support him and not expose too many flanks. This will do 2 things. It will deter your opponent from just poking at it, because 1-3 range attack on it means nothing. It's a waste. So if you give him a friend, be it Roko or other units, he becomes impossible to kill. He's a deterrent, and all of a sudden you have a unit that gives you econ, because your opponent uses combos to try to get rid of it. They might miss. If they miss, you just put it back, you heal it back up, and you get it again. It costs magic, of course, but it's not a champion I play in every matchup at all, but it has single-handedly won me games against. I played against Prophet in the Tournament of Champion. It was a really great game, and I think I won was because of Turanga, because in that matchup it's death by 1,000 cuts, but Turanga doesn't care. It's a great champion, but you need to play him a bit more carefully in mind, which is a theme for Isle Vekkid, if I'm being honest. Like, Crab Knights, if you support them, give only one flank to attack because something else is next to it. It's going to survive more turns. It's going to be tough to deal with. But Ivalu is a big example of that also. He's not going to be played in every matchup at all, but sometimes he just wins you the game. He's worth summoning. Summon it like alone. I didn't have any other units just because my opponent was a bit too forward. I could attack with it, and then he needed to come to me again. I did not regret playing him at all. I love this champion.
You hit the nail in the head. I think he's just like a Crab Knight Plus. In order to utilize the most, you need to just allow your opponent to not attack them multiple times. Or just attacking them multiple times is a bad play, because there's also all of these other units that you aren't killing in them if you're doing that. I have like a few games in mind where I would just have like Ranga and a few Crab Knights on the board, and it's just like a wall that the opponent can't
What do
get
you do?
through.
Yeah.
You need to kill something, but you can't kill anything. Everything is just gonna take so long to kill. In general, like Turanga at least sounds like the least flashy out of the champions, and he probably is. Very special in that way, that just a big brute that you need to care about. You need to make sure that your opponent just can't deal with them, and then you're getting 3 melee each turn just from having this big champ that stays on the board. And there are just certain matchups where the opponent can't deal with Turanga. I think it's probably the best card in the game against Storm Goblins, because how the hell do you deal with that?
Yeah.
You deal 2 damage to it, they heal it up, then you do that again, and you never kill it.
Why would you want to attack with 3 dice when you can attack with 8 dice?
Right. I take back everything.
Discard Turanga, you need 8 magic.
Turanga, I do think, is very good in the end game. Like, that's the time when I try and save for Turanga the most. Is if it's early, I'll just get rid of Turanga, but in the end game, you're going to have some extra magic if it goes that long, and that's the perfect time, I feel like, to use Turanga.
It ties to the tip that Nestle talked about, like discard heavily. You don't have Turanga in the first half of your deck. It's a bit, if you are not forced to discard it, and just keep it as a safe measure if you go into the end game with extra magic, and you will be good in that context. People have less resources, less combo, less events. It's going to be hard to deal with. So
Turanga might cost 5, but he's not a 5-cost champion.
no, you're right. And if we do the math, you pay 6 magic for 310, right? And then 7 magic for 312. But it's not just that, because it takes into context the situation you're in, right? So you pay 1 magic, maybe, but he might be the costliest champion in the game if you go that long. But what did it give you, right? What did that magic allow? Board presence, protection for Roko, or gate clog, it gave you something else than just healing 2 HP. So of course it's costly, but it's not just 2 HP.
Now on to the champ that everybody's been waiting for, Y2E.
Yeah.
Big Dragon.
You guys just discard Y2E, right?
I never play him.
You
Worst
know what?
champion in the game.
I do actually. Like, I discard him maybe a third of my games because I play against aggro decks and I don't need to. But that doesn't mean I don't go to 8 magic. And it's so funny, it works every time. Every time you go to 8 magic, and all of a sudden, there's less momentum. People don't go as forward as quickly, and you can breathe as Isle Vekkid. That's so funny. But yeah, he's great.
Yeah, it depends. Some players just don't notice the 8 magic, or they're just like, yeah, maybe he doesn't have it, and they'll press on. At least that's my experience sometimes. And then they always have Y2E when I do that. I was like, they probably don't have it. It's early. I'll attack.
That's fine.
Like, nope, I got Y2E and plunge, and now I'm dead.
Game over.
So you do have to respect it, even if they might have discarded it. So
it's exactly that. It's so much damage. And with a plunge, it can be so much damage. I don't know about you, Nestle, but my most damage I did was, I think, 28 damage with a plunge. I attacked for 8. I got 8 out of 8. And then I got 4 units, 4 other targets, because it was a perfect setup. I just plunged into everything around me. I did 5 damage to 2 5 HP gates or something like that. It's an atomic bomb. So you need to respect it a bit. But at the same time, if you do too much, you might lose. One example of that, if I play Forged against Isle Vekkid, I cannot play around Y2E. Otherwise, it's so hard to play the range game against. It's almost impossible. They will go back, right? So how, if you block the inventor, how do you move forward? It's so tough. So you need to advance and not play around Y2E, and if they have it, probably loss. That's the power of fear.
You ask what's the most damage I did. I'm looking. I think I know exactly what game that is, and I want to see. I never counted the damage. I think I hit like 7 units or something. It was insane.
What?
Yeah.
I need to see this too. Please send me the link.
Theoretically, you could hit 8 directions, but I don't see how you'd get Y2E to that spot. So I think 7's probably the most you can hit. Yeah.
I bet. I hit enemy summoner and 3 other units in the 10 hell gate. It wasn't as insane.
It felt insane, I'm sure.
Especially since the setup, and this is something that I'm gonna talk about in a second, but I want to count this now. 23, you did one more than I ever did. I think the most obvious situation is what was mentioned in that you just go up to 8 magic and make your opponent paranoid. I used to say a lot that you just should discard by 3 on turn 1 in order to get up to 8 magic. That's a good tip in general, especially if your opponent is going to aggro. As was said, you can't do anything about that if they have white.
Yeah.
Too bad. You up another game. In general, a lot of aggressive factions just can't. If they need to play around the white 2 every single turn, they're just gonna end up not being able to aggro you properly. And Isle Vekkid, you usually win a long game. I think that's the main use, but I think white 2 has a totally different side that's very fun to explore. And that's just using him to nickel and dime your way to victory. Like summoning Y2 to kill a few units, let Y2 live, then kill a few more units, then let him live, then doing that over and over again in order to just kill a bunch of stuff. He doesn't need to be as flashy in order to become just an insane powerhouse. And what I was saying earlier with Plunge, I think the most interesting scenarios with Y2 are like when you have discarded a bunch because you know you have the expensive 8-cost champion in your deck. Your opponent is not in your face. So you need to figure out what exactly should you keep, how should you build your hand in order to make Y2 the most powerful, and usually the answer is Plunge, just to be able to put them in your opponent's face and just get a lot of value out of that. And I think that's why Y2 is not usually the scariest at 8 magic, he's the scariest at 9 magic, because all of a sudden it allows Y2 plus Fighter plus Plunge.
Yes, exactly.
While Force can't play around you having 8 magic, nobody can play around you having 9 magic and doing that, really. It's a bit more situational, obviously. Getting to 9 magic is very hard. Good opponents are gonna know how to deal with Isle Vekkid, and that is by not letting them get up high magic values, or at least that's one way of dealing with them. We still need to discard a lot, and like if you draw your plunges before your Y2E, that's just unfortunate. Probably gonna need to discard them. You have plunge Y2 in hand and 9 magic, and you draw 3 cards and you draw 3 Crab Knights. You know, it's gonna happen sometimes, and you're gonna be very sad that you won't be able to get it. But learning how to set up that extremely high value hand with Y2E is probably the most fun aspect of the champ for me, even though it's fun to just explode the ice golems with one attack, you know.
I want to add about the slow play of Y2E. This is to tie up with other things like Turanga and Crab Knights, where if you support them, you give them some friends, they probably will survive more than one turn, and then they become even harder to kill, they get even more value. It's the same with Y2E. If you can always use it as a bomb, right, with Plunge and just send it to its death. It did its damage, it killed a bunch of things. The summoner is now super low, it cannot do anything anymore. Great. If you can play it in a melee, in a brawl where it's somewhat protected, some flanks are not open, then there's a big chance you get a second attack with Y2E. And that's devastating. I've played against Shoots a couple of times against his Chosen Grove, and there's one particular game he had horrible miss. But if Y2E only attacked once, it would have been a good hit, but Nimid is now low. But because I could attack a second time, the game was just over. The strat of just playing it a bit more in the back, killing one unit if they are a bit more, if it's not a pure range game, of course, if they are in the midfield or even in your zone. If they can't kill it, and it's a big choice, clog space to prevent some combos with dancers, or do I go for Y2E? If they go for Y2E, well, great, you got your space and you can still take good trades. But if they go for Y2E and miss for some reason, I think the game is like pretty over. There's nuance in how you play him, even though he's very costly. He still has 8 life, right? 8 life with 1 or 2 flank open, it's not that easy to kill. So yeah, I love this card because it has a mind game element, but at the same time, it's not just a bomb you just throw out and it dies and everything dies and fine. There is nuance. You can find some strategies with it that works.
It's a bomb on a stick that you can throw multiple times if you can position properly. I will mention one game where I played Y2E against Filth, but they played Shield of the Hopeful that turn. So I just did like 3 damage with Y2E that turn. I think it was more like 6 or something actually. Attacked with Y2E the next turn, did like 4 damage, and then retreated. In my last 5 cards I knew I had Plunge. So Y2E was going to be good after that point, even though they went down to 3 health. They were going to kill the enemy summoner at some point, so... You can just summon Y2E to deal like 6 damage with 1 attack. That's insane just by itself. Everything else in this deck deals 5 melee, unless it has a relic on it, or unless it's like a super well set up Roku.
Yeah.
So just being able to heal a bit more than that damage with just a singular attack is insane. Honestly, an issue with Y2 sometimes for me is that if Y2 rolls well, I won't be able to use all 3 of my attacks. That's sort of like a rich person issue, right? You're already being in that case. It's an issue we really want
What
to
would
have.
you guys say are some of the tougher factions for IV to face?
Spectral Conclave.
Which factions do you think they struggle against?
That was quick.
I'm sorry, but I don't know what you think about this, Nestle, but every time I'm against Spectral Conclave, it's pain and a pain. It's a pain to be child friendly. It's a pain. And frankly, I don't think it's a favorite matchup. Like, I don't think it's even. I think you need to work so well and so perfectly with Roko every turn. And even then, yeah, it's a tough matchup. That's the main one for me.
I would say Spectrum Conclave versus Isle Vekkid is like the hardest matchup to play in the whole game for me as Isle Vekkid. Isle Vekkid are already super hard to play, and Spectral Conclave are super hard to play against. It's a very hard combination.
You're melee heavy for the most part. There's a lot of ways you can trigger depart. One of your best units, the Crab Knight, can just get discarded by Fade Away.
Yeah, everything can get discarded by Fade Away. You don't want to put a relic on anything. Or a Spite Skin. It's just going to get destroyed. Too bad.
You need to rely on snipers with 2 range to kill illusion. It's
the worst feeling ever
Yeah.
in this matchup. And Roko just keeps hitting 1 out of 3 range. It makes you hate Spectral Conclave for that.
the only way I found somewhat success against Spectral Conclave, you need to assassinate. So you need to not care about the part to an extent. You need to put a Crab Knight next to Roko so he can suffer less damage. If they just send illusion at you, fine. You'll get 1 or 0 damage. And then you need to build magic and get Y2E to plunge and do damage to Farron. And then you need to get an opening so you can plunge again with a Crab Knight or Saka to finish off. I've only won against Spectral Conclave by assassination. Forced assassination with Vekkid is so difficult because it's not really their skill set. Like, they don't just force an assassination like other factions do. Your opponent needs to be greedy, maybe not as careful, but of course Farron will have to move up because you'll never move up against them. So there is maybe an opening, but it's a really rough matchup. It's really rough.
I will disagree that you need to assassinate Farron. I have won this matchup quite a few times by just playing for a long game. After experimenting with it for a bit, I think that's probably the main way to do it. It's so many nuances to it. I feel like I've also used my knowledge from facing them as Thunder Orcs as well. And it's the fact that your champions, even if they're very big melee guys, are also just pretty good. Spectral Conclave are gonna have an issue dealing with Turanga. Even though they can't necessarily kill anything, it's just a big unit that it's hard for them to deal with because they hit their damage output is not that strong. The main issue with it is the Mind Mages not allowing Roku to even be able to stay in the action.
Oh my god.
Because
I didn't even think about that.
you know all your synergies with snipers and dancers and fighters. Well, sniper can be replaced with the Mind Mage and then your opponent uses that against you. That's, I think, the main worry of that. And also just putting a Crab Knight next to Roku is very scary because all of a sudden Like, they don't just attack you for 3 melee. They take away your tough and then attack you for 3
Yeah.
melee.
You can't place a Crab Knight in front of Roko. It needs to be behind it. So that means Roko needs to have a flank open at all times. Otherwise, they can fade away the knight or take it against you. Like, it's rough to play against it.
I think you do have a few saving factors, though. The fact that Roku has a lot of mobility with the fighters and plunge allows you to put a forward gate against them, not necessarily to assassinate them, but just to be a nuisance. Gates are just good against Spectral Conclave in general. You do have some tools. You can put a relic on a sniper to make it more common that it'll kill, or put a spite skin.
Yeah.
They do at least 1 damage. They won't be able to come to you. You can put some of your higher health units a bit more forward, just so it can play into fade away if they're not champs, but your opponent is gonna need to deal with them, which can mess them up. In general, it's just hard to know what to do. I feel like I'm just blabbering. I'm not saying any particular strategy here because I don't know what the particular strategy is. You can make it work against them, which will transition into me saying that I don't think they're the worst matchup for Isle Vekkid, in my opinion.
All right.
I think their worst matchup is Phoenix Elves.
Just because Spirit of the Phoenix being able to take out your Crab Knights and stuff?
It's a few things. First of all, you really like the ranged game. It's tough to deal with them because all of a sudden you really like to have like a dancer and Roku behind. A Royal Guardian can just shove that to the side and let Maldaria kill the dancer and then be pulled back. That's like a karma because Isle Vekkid have an issue when the opponent, and at least in my experience, have an issue when the opponent can just pull units back. It's partly their thing.
Yeah, right. You're right.
Because all of a sudden, that allows them to kite Roku, their main strength at the range. Your other option, like it was said earlier, aren't as good in this matchup. Your third option, putting Kuroko in front of everything and a Cram Knight behind in order to tank for them, it's not good either, because Phoenix Elves do have that high damage output. At some point, they're gonna force Roku out of the fight.
You reminded me that this was in the league, or you didn't say it was in the league, but I feel like it sounded familiar. And the Isle Vekkid were 43%, 42.9, so they won 36 and lost 48. It does kind of check out, but if your worst matchup is 43%, kind of makes me think Isle Vekkid are pretty strong overall. Where would you guys place them out of the 30 factions in the game?
On a good day, I'd say low S tier. On a bad day, so which means bad faction or anything, I'd put them like at A. Low S minus would be the top I would put them, because even though they are a versatile faction, they don't excel particularly well at. They're good at econ, but they don't have like the versatility of a deck like Sand Goblins, which can do multiple things like assassination, econ. Yeah, I'd put them in the upper class for sure, like maybe top 8, maybe. What do you think, Nesle?
I would say somewhere like 6th best, in my opinion. They're a tough faction to play to some degree, but they are also a very tough faction to play against. It's hard to know what to do exactly against these guys. And at the highest level, I think you have tools to deal with everything. There's like a few matchups that I don't know how to deal with Isle Vekkid yet. But I feel like the more I play them, even those matchups are gonna become, if not favored, at least even for Isle Vekkid, right? The more I play them, the more I realize they don't really have that many bad matchups. Better yet, a lot of their good matchups are also top tier factions. So if you're thinking about like the meta in general, if they're 6th, they probably have a winning matchup into most of those 5 above them, you know?
Yeah, that's close to where we had them when Aaron and I did our tier list. We put them in A+, which is and like the 8th best deck, so kind of in that same sort of range.
So we all agree. So we can all just keep on living. Nobody has to get taken out.
The rest of the list, we might disagree about some things, but
Well, let's not get into that. Let's not get into that. What do you guys feel like are common mistakes you see people make with Isle Vekkid when they're first starting out?
Nesle mentioned not discarding enough, being too attached to some cards. I think a mistake would be to not utilize the synergy between commons without Roko. What I mean by that is need Roko to make Dancer work. You just need another unit, and they work well with snipers, right? It's not the most efficient summon. You're gonna summon a Dancer and a Sniper. It's gonna cost 3 magic. You're gonna do 5 dice, right? It's okay. but it's good. And sometimes people want to force Rocco to be involved. I personally involve him a lot. Don't forget that you can very well play commons. Commons are good on their own. You don't need Rocco to make trade work. You'll put Rocco in a bad situation because you wanted to use the +1 attack on the sniper, right? For 13% chance to get one more damage or something like that. Rocco is the main event of the deck, but the commons can work. They can synergize with each other on their own. You have anything else, Nestle?
Probably gonna be quick for me. Discard more, man. You don't need all of those cards. Go on, discard them all. The thing is way too common for me to see people. I'm keeping these cards and keeping these cards. It's not the right play most of the time to keep cards in hand as Isle Vekkid, or at least not too many.
One question I have is, how often do you discard a gate in your games, or do you usually try to play them all?
Never.
Never.
And that's the must-play card. There you go. That's the must-play card of Isle Vekkid. You play all your gates. Yeah, I just love that instant boost of summoning a unit. And man, gates are so important because you're a back row faction. I'd say for me, I play gates all the time. All my gates.
My answer is always, I play like one, usually. It depends. It depends on the matchup. If my opponent is running at me, I'm going to need gates in order to be able to protect. But even then, I'm still going to play like 2 and discard the third one. If I'm playing a ranged game, or if like my opponent is chosen grow and they can't get to me or something like that, I'm going to play 1 gate on like A2 or on B1, and it's good. I don't need anything else. As long as Rocco is just sitting in that part of the board, my opponent is gonna need to come to me in order to just hit something, because I'm going to be able to reach their units before they are able to reach mine. So usually 1 gate is like 50% of the time the answer for me.
Well, we disagree on this one. That's fine.
I think it's very funny that you've sent there a must plays, and I'm like the total opposite.
No? Yeah, I don't know. It's for me, I'm not the kind of player who just sits back on turn 1. If I go first, I'll try to utilize all 3 attacks right away, get magic and tempo, and I'm not so much the kind of just moving the dancer back, moving the sniper in front of the dancer, or just not moving the sniper at all and attacking once. Because I feel like if you put a dancer right next to Rocco turn 1, you can move up enough that you can have a 6 attack dice with Rocco buffed by the sniper and the dancer, and basically you're still back. You're gonna go back to space, so you're still not that much in their face, so you set up a fight in the mid board. But because of that, because I move up like this, I need to place my gates right away, like on A3, even A2, because I'm gonna go back to space, so I'm gonna be next to another gate spot. I like to set up the mid board more than going full back on turn 1, because I feel like one of the weakness the Vikkids have are pressure and movement dependency. Not big weakness, but it's still weaknesses. And if you move up a bit in your first turns, the other faction doesn't have that much freedom to just move how they want into your zone, and then you can move back a bit and set up the pace. I guess that's just my preference or my knee-jerk reaction to, I know they're gonna pressure me. That's how everybody plays against Vikkids, unless their range game is awesome. Moving up a bit and then moving back puts pressure enough so I have a more space to work with for longer. I guess that's my reasoning. Sometimes I might discard a gate, of course. I like playing all of them.
It's a good point that usually I discard gates when my opponent is playing a range game, but I feel like I notice that a lot. I think a lot of people don't understand that Isle Vekkid can beat them out at the ranged game, or just aren't approaching because they aren't drawing early gates. But those are games where you are favored anyways. I do think I play gates more often, like a harder sport that I'm in. And maybe there's something to it. I think people are not open enough to discarding gates in general too. Sometimes you can discard them. It's fine. And I do that quite often.
Well, you guys did agree on most of the things that we talked about today, but we appreciate both you guys coming on the podcast, talking some Isle Vekkid with us.
Thanks for the invite.
It's great.
This has been another episode of Discard for Magic, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.